Welcome everybody to the 4th episode of Stefan Frank's Photobook Show. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Today's subject is Robert Adams. I'm a big fan of Robert Adams, so I'm quite excited about this. Stefan will be taking a look at the work of Robert Adams through his many books. So Robert Adams published tons of books, and Stefan really dug through several of them, and he will present several of those books today. As most of you know, I am Anja from StrudelmediaLive, and I want to thank you for being here. For those of you who are new to the series, Stefan Frank teaches photography classes for StrudelmediaLive. He has taught, for example, Poetics of Space. He taught a class on surrealism in photography, and he's currently teaching a nighttime photography class. And he's based in Germany.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And as Anja said, if you have any questions or if you want to have anything discussed, just jump in. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about Robert Adams and why I do this. As Anja, I am a great Robert Adams fan, and that has many reasons. And we will look at his photo book, and especially at one book that that came out recently about his work. And maybe you also will find some more reasons why you love him. Let me give you some background on him. American Silence. American Silence is the title of an exhibition and a book that accompanies this exhibition, which has taken place in Washington, I think last year, and it is now moving across America, and I hope it will eventually end up in Europe too. And today, everything will be about, I looked for some quotes by Robert Adams, because he's not only a photographer, he's also a very good writer. So one of the reasons why I love him so much is basically also because of this book, which you probably maybe see on the other screen here, Why People Photograph, because he was grappling his whole life with the idea, why are we actually doing what we're doing, and why do we love it so much? And this quote for me is very important, has been very important for his work, and it is very important became very important for my book. This is about the effort I make photographers and non-photographers to affirm life without lying about it, and then to behave in accord with our vision. Robert Adams was born in 1937 in New Jersey. He was born in New Jersey, but he moved with his family very quickly to the west, to Colorado, when he was 15. And he started photography in 1963. He said he grew up on a steady diet of Alfred Stieglitz's camera work, which was one of the most important quarterly magazines for photography in the 20s and 30s in America. So this is an interesting quote from him, that he grew up on this diet of Stieglitz photos, Paul Strand photos, so the classical modern photos of classical American photography. One of the key moments in his life was when he encountered Ansel Adams. He is not related to Ansel Adams, but he has bought in, I had to write it down before I get it. In 1966, he bought a print of Ansel Adams' Moonrise over Hernandez. So this was one of the most important moments in his life, as he said. So this was the other book that he had in his library. This is The American Earth. So very early in his career, he started looking at America and the American landscape. And it is interesting to see the contrast between his view of the American landscape and Ansel Adams' view of the American landscape. You all probably know his Ansel Adams' views of this untouched, beautiful landscapes of the West, of the national parks. This is the Tetons and Snake River from 1942. These screenshots don't do justice to the prints that you get from Ansel Adams, because it was such a fine, was not only a great photographer, but it was also a great printer. And this is the background of how Robert Adams grew up with landscape pictures. Paul Strand was another important figure in his life. So he wrote a lot about Paul Strand, about his beautiful book, Time in New England. If you get the chance to get this book into your hand, it's really worthwhile. And from him, he learned a lot about photography, but also about the mix of texts and photography, because his Time in New England is very text heavy. And then he went on to photograph something that is very far away from these untouched landscapes. So one commentator said he was photographing ugly stuff like housing developments, mobile homes, drive-in movie theaters, gas stations, and strip malls, highways, medians, overpasses, parking lots. Why would you photograph a parking lot? Littered fields, empty lots, and spindly trees. So all the stuff that Ansel Adams would never photograph, and he started photographing this. His breakout into the world of photography, into the wider world of photography, was an exhibition in the Kodak Eastman House in New York, New Topographics, Pictures of Man-Altered Landscapes. This was 1975. This was an important point in time, not only for Robert Adams, but for photography itself, because up to this point, our idea of landscape was an untouched landscape. So this is what Ansel Adams looked at, untouched landscapes. And for Robert Adams, he was always feeling both sides of this. So the untouched, the beauty of the untouched landscape, but also the intrusion of man into these landscapes. These are the photographers that were in this exhibition. Each and every one of these photographers took on important careers that went on until late into the 2000s. The Bechers, we have are two photographers from Germany. You probably know them from their water towers. This was also an important moment for German photography, that they had this kind of recognition, because this was a breakout for the Düsseldorf School of Photography, which is immensely important for Germany and probably for all photography in Europe. Frank Golke, Frank Golke, probably not a German, but only German heritage. Nicholas Nixon, Stephen Shaw, of course, one of the great photography stars of the late 20th century, Henry Wessel. All these guys took on a career on their own, and Robert Adams was in the midst of this movement. The critics of the new topographics attested them a problem of style, a stylistic anonymity. I think it is at this point important to see that these photographers didn't get this from themselves. So this is from Aperture from 1963, 26 gasoline stations, an important work of art. So it was an artist book, and he was just running around and photographing a gasoline station. And this was an impulse into photography that came outside of photography, because Aperture was at that point not a photographer. He was just a painter and an artist, and he ran around making these photographs, not for the photographs, but for having pictures to draw, having something to draw pictures from. So this problem of style and this anonymity was coming from the art movement in this time. So pop art was very high on this idea of prefabricated things and things that are not nature made but industrial made. So this trajectory of the new topographics, I already mentioned the Bechers and their importance for German photography. But of course, Stephen Shore went on this trajectory. Strangely enough, this book is from 1982. So the first edition came out in 1982, although he made most of the pictures already in the 70s and had most of his pictures from uncommon places hanging in this exhibition. Louis Balz, also important figure. Here, also interesting to see that this came out later, and Louis Balz never ever really got so much into photo book making. So most of the new topographics were initially not book makers. So this has something to do with the state of the photo book in the 70s. The photo book was not at that place where it is today. It was not the dominant form of how to bring photography to people. That was just not the case in the 70s. So a lot of these books were made much later, after the new topographics and after people like Adams, Balz had already photographed for a while. So they started making their photo books in the 80s and later, which I think is probably one of the reasons why they get re-edited or reissued so often. This original Uncommon Places, this has been re-edited over and over and over again by Stidel whenever they need a new book that needs to be come out. I think now it's even at MacBooks, the new edition. So this always gets re-edited. New pictures are added, old pictures are removed. So this is never finished, and the reason for this is that there is no original Uncommon Places. This is was just done after the fact. That and probably people like Robert Adams and Stephen Shore, they are just cash cows for Aperture and Stidel. They just sell a lot of Stephen Shore books, which means practically every year a new Stephen Shore book has to come out. So this means all the books we will look at have some kind of remixing of Robert Adams in them. So this also means we are far more removed from the original point in time when these pictures were done. So now we look at his pictures differently. So this topics that he had about the destruction of nature, the emergence of how man intrudes into untouched nature, which is the core of his work. We look at this differently today because we are in a very different place. In the 17th, we could still look at non-man-altered landscapes, probably on the world there is nothing left that is not man-altered. So this remixing, this re-evaluating also means that we get re-editions of these photo books, which sometimes is a good thing, because if you look at this book, I've got the original version of this here. This has some very dubious decisions in them. So it's good that, so probably it's a good idea just to re-edit and take out some of the decisions here, like this very dubious color on the dust jacket. So, and the very dubious fonts here. So Stydel is re-editing and reissuing these books, and they are very much muted right now. So another re-edition is American Silent, which accompanies this huge retrospective of his work, which is an interesting book, which we will look at in the end. So now we go to the landscape that frightens you the most and take pictures until you are not scared anymore. So this is his credo of how he goes into the world and takes pictures. So these are the titles we will be looking at. The first one is the one that you see here on top, Why People Photograph. But then we will look at one landmark book, The New West, which came out in 1974. We'll then look at Summer Nights Walking. This is a re-editioned book that I've shown you a while ago. Why People Photograph came out in 1994. This is the collection of essays. The Place We Live is a big box that Stydel did in 2014, and American Silence is the latest re-edition of that. So let's start at the top. This is Why People Photograph. Get this over here a little bit. Why People Photograph. Why People Photograph is not a photo book. It's a collection of essays, essays that he wrote for about colleagues, about people he knew, people he did not know but admired, people that were his idols, like Ansel Adams or Eugene Aget. This is a collection of essays that he did when he was, that he published in all kinds of camera magazines, forwards to exhibitions, forwards to books. And he turned some of these articles that he started here into longer essays. And this is a beautiful book because in some way there is no simple answer for why people photograph, but the whole book tries to answer this. And he tries to answer it with looking at pictures from colleagues. And there's a whole chapter about pictures of dogs. He just includes pictures of dogs and why he loves these dog pictures and how humor belongs into these pictures. So this is just a great collection of getting to know how he thinks. There is this long chapter about Paul Strand, a photographer he greatly admired. He talks about where his famous photography comes from, what his relationship to the landscape was. So if you want an introduction to his work with his own words, this is the way to go. And this is a very cheap introduction into his work. So probably doesn't cost much more than $20 now. So comes highly recommended. But let's look at some photo books here. So this was done around the time of the new topographics. So this is about man-altered landscapes. So for me, in the center of this book is a great feeling of hurt, and the hurt is about this pain is about he sees how this untouched landscape is littered with settlements. So this was a time when Denver started sprawling into the mountains, and he went to to several places around the Colorado Front Range and photographed there. It's always interesting to look at this at his books. to look at the first book, to look at the first picture and the last picture. So the first picture is how he imagines an ideal world, and the ideal world has some influences of people, of men, but it basically is nature. So this is an ideal state. And he ends it on a cemetery, and the cemetery is the end of is done on the Pioneer cemetery near Empire. So these are pioneers, so the first people that came to this place, found their final resting place there. So this is a historic picture in a way that he describes the movement of the settlement, of the settlements into the West. The structure here is interesting because it starts with a prairie. Then goes to tracts and mobile homes. Then goes to the city. Yeah, flips through this because I've written it down. So prairie, tracts and mobile homes, the city, foothills, and then the mountains. So the whole book is organized like a travel. So it starts from the prairie with very silent and solemn pictures. There's always the sky in it, a great empty sky. Very simple. We'll make this a little bit bigger for you so that you can see it a little bit better. That's better. You always see the open sky here, but then you see small intrusions here, and the intrusions get bigger and bigger until we arrive at tracts and mobile homes. And this is where the digging starts and houses are built. And this is the beginning of the sprawling suburbs. So, and this is an overview picture of how these suburbs are embedded in this nature. So, and then he shows you this. There are a couple of very iconic pictures in here. So if you know some pictures of Robert Adams, this is probably one of them. Because he's not, I always think he's not one-dimensional. So he's talking about the destruction that that these settlements brings, but he also talks about community, that there is some kind of community coming up. And here this ends, it's almost at the ends of this tracts and mobile homes, and here we are entering the city. And of course, he has his pictures where he just talks a lot about the emergence of these cars here. And one of the things I like, so this is one of the pictures that are not very famous, but which is one of my favorite pictures from him. Robert Adams is just great at composing pictures, so he's really good at that. So there's nothing superfluous here. There's everything fits together. So we're driving through the city. We see people that get lost in the city. We see the emergence of high-rises. We see endless streets crisscrossing the city. The houses become bigger. The supermarkets look like houses. These are the empty parking lots. And then we just move out of the city again and into the foothills surrounding these cities. And again, here's you can almost see him driving through this area. And this is, of course, one of his famous photographs, because he was always talking about the West, and the West has always this connection with a new frontier. And suddenly, this exploration of the West, the frontier, it just vanished, because there was just after the West, there's only the sea coming. So eventually, this exploration and this pushing the frontier, it just comes to a halt at a gas station. And here's ending in the hills and the mountains. And then he's coming to the mountains. And the civilization becomes more sparse. And here we end on this pioneer cemetery. And this is just a great book with a great structure. And I will show you one. So what's interesting to me here is the structure is always the same if you observe it. So it always has a very classic structure. It always has one page and an explanation on the page. There is no pairing in here. He doesn't pair photographs. And this, to me, is the strength of this photo book, that there are no pairs in there. And please keep this idea in mind, because we will come back to this, and keep this photograph here in mind, because we will also come back to this. So this was the initial trajectory. So this was the New West. This made him famous. This got him into exhibitions. And this is the next book. So this is Summer Nights. Sam and Sandy probably already can't hear it anymore, because I'm showing this always in nighttime photography, in the nighttime photography course, because this is just great nighttime photography. And this has a very different vibe than the New West. Here he is quieter, and he is more at peace with what he sees. This is book. The photographs for this book were created on strolls that he did around his neighborhood at night. And this is just, he's just interested in the beauty of these things and how it looks beautiful at night. There are gems like this one, but it's interesting to see that here he pairs, and the pairs usually work. So one thing that he's always that he's doing a lot is he pairs one that is dark on the upper side with one that is dark on the lower side. This is a pattern that he sometimes uses to break his normal way of sequencing it, where he says that where the sky, the brightest thing, the sky is always up. But here, these pairings, they all work, so they fit together. Things like this, as you look here, because it is very bright. This is one of the favorite pictures of Alex Soss. He speaks about this picture all the time, and you can clearly see why. But he pairs it with something that is much calmer here, that does not draw too much attention to it, so you can almost oversee it. So here, pairing is very deliberate and very careful. And you see that you have echoes like this here, like these poles here that are echoed in here. So it's very cleverly thought out and paired. Let me show you one last pairing here. This is the pairing that I meant. So here is the dark curve goes to the bottom, and here it goes to the top. So this is just a great pairing. So this is just a wonderful, quiet, solemn book with some dubious decisions. So let's comment the dubious decisions. The typo, I do not know how people will perceive our typo 20 years from now, but this is really an atrocity, what they did here. And what I find even more dubious is the idea to put this picture here in front. They wanted to tie this with, tie in with a picture in the New West, which has a similar picture with a similar vibe of a woman sitting alone in a room. But this gives off a completely different vibe to what comes after this. So after this, there are no people in there anymore. So this is the only person that you see here. So it's a very dubious decision. It was probably, I hope so, not done by Robert Adams. So this is Summer Nights. So this is probably the second most famous book by Robert Adams. He did a lot of other books in there. And let me just show you the big thing. Of course, someone like Robert Adams, he gets a critical collection of all his work. So this is something that Steidl did in 2014, where they just collected everything. And this is great. So 3 books, The Place We Live, contains a lot of essays about Robert Adams, about his photography, where it comes from, who he refers to. They dissect a lot of these image references he uses. So if you have read this, you know where all the references come from, because he's always referencing people like Ansel Adams, people like Timothy O'Sullivan, who photographed in the South a lot, but also in the West a lot. So he's always referencing these guys in his pictures, and you can either read his own words or you can read in these books, because they critically dissect everything. So one thing that is beautiful about this book is that it contains most of his books, and it contains them in a way, in the way they were made when he started. So let's look at the New West. Which starts on 56. No, not in the way that I said. So, yeah. So here, if you compare this is one of the issues that you always get with these re-editions of work, in contrast to the original. They put everything they put everything together, and they put it together in a sometimes awkward way, because it's just arbitrary. It's just how the pictures, they just collected the big pictures and put them together. So, and this sometimes ends up with very strange pairings like this here. So this is a pairing that completely does not work. And I think it becomes clear if you compare it with how it originally was, because this picture just needs space. And if you put something on the right side to it, there is just nothing that goes from the right to the left. So this is always an issue with these kinds of collections. But on the bright side of this, there are forgotten projects of him, like one thing he did very early, this Eden, which is actually a place in Colorado somewhere. And this is just the prototype of the New West, but it is not as bitter as the New West is. So this is just, he's closer to the people here. He already has developed this look and this compositional style, but these pictures are much warmer than the pictures in the New West are, and he's much more amicable to the people he photographs. So this is a great strength of these kinds of books, that they just collect everything, and you can just look at them and look at where does it come from, how did he develop a style over time. Also contains the late work. It contains off work like Bodhisattva, a series of photographs of a statue. These are just interesting to see if you have already seen everything about Robert Adams and are not, and you do not have enough yet. So this is a complete collection, has all the projects. And as I said, it has this the third part of this contains essays about him, a landmark essay from Papa-George, a great fan of Robert Adams. So after you have read this, you should probably read this essay, because it's just a great way of framing Robert Adams and his importance for other photographers, especially. So this is just worthwhile to have. So I got this cheap. This is probably the reason why I have it, and I did not regret it. So it was on sale for a while. I do not know if it is still available. The last thing we want to look at is American Silence. So this is a great Robert Adams exhibition, and it is the same as these three, but in a compressed form. And it again contains all his work, excerpts of all his work, and sometimes there are omissions there, and sometimes what you can see here. Just want to show you one thing here about the New West again, because of course the New West is also here in here. You see, this is a decision by Aperture to make a picture out of the New West into Summer Nights Walking. So you see some weird decisions here. And this is a picture that I wanted to show you. This is what happens if you just randomly slap pictures together because you don't have enough space here. So in the this is what it was before. It's just one picture on one page, and the other page is empty. And this has a totally different vibe to it. This is someone on the brink of adulthood, and he's growing up in this suburb structure. And if you put another kid to this, you only see there are two kids. So suddenly this picture, which is really a strong picture, if you put it alone on a page, suddenly this picture falls flat. I understand, excuse me. I understand the decisions. You have to save space. You do not have in a combined book like this, which contains everything by Robert Adams. You cannot waste one page here. But here they're doing the same thing. So this is about a community that is starting to grow, and this has no relationship whatsoever to the picture on the right. but of course you see it on the same page, and suddenly something starts to emerge, and you wonder, okay, here's the community, but two people are running away. Why are they running away? But this is not the story. So this is, if you only want to buy one book by Robert Adams, buy this one. It has these issues of weird pairings, but it is complete. It is very beautifully printed. This is actually the only book that has an open paper, an uncoated paper. And this, you probably can't see it on the screen, but this is really wonderful for the black and white shots that he does. So it is really very nicely printed, wonderful book. Contains all the great works like the Summer Night Walking. Has excellent essays in it. Has a biography, a long biography, which is interesting to read, and this is where I pulled this fact from, that he bought a print of Ansel Adams in 1966, which is just important to know if you want to understand how a photographer ticks. So this is, apart from the issues it had, it is a great book. Because the work by Robert Adams is great, and because they did a very good job to try to summarize a whole life worth of pictures. And this is all I have for you today.
Stefan, is your Summer Nights Walking edition, is that a first edition that you have?
I don't know. I don't think so. I just lost the dust jacket because I put it off because it's really ugly. It has this pink and this you see this color here in here. It's also a pink color on the outside, and really the font is really annoying. It's
right. Yeah, this is not the original because I think this was much later. The font looks, yeah, because I love the way the sequencing is. It's really beautiful. Yeah,
the sequencing is great. Yeah, and this is, so it is ugly until here, but here it's really a fine edition. So the printing is okay. It's from the, I guess it's somewhere from the 90s or 2000s, early 2000s reprint.
I was also wondering if you could show again the book where he went from the trailer parks to the big city, and then there was this one photo where we are all of a sudden in a supermarket. I found that really interesting, how we were looking at big buildings and then we saw the supermarket picture, and I saw that also as big buildings.
This combination here.
Right.
Yeah, this is from the New West. This is actually a crossover from what we bought. So he did, this basically started him on the idea of I go into the city and I look at what we buy, so what people are buying. So this is an interesting thing to look at, because it's you're probably right that he first thinks in composition, because the composition is very similar here, going from big cities to these towers of products. But then he goes from this is actually the only interior shot, and this is interesting, let's do more of that. And then he did
Anya, can you append a bibliography to the rerun of the talk?
Yes.
I have a little known Robert Adams book that I bought as a dog lover, which is photographs of his dog Sally, called I Hear the Leaves and Love the Light.
Yeah, I don't know, is it good? Because I only know that because he talks about this book in his in one of the essays about humor in photography.
It's very, very appealing.
When you look
Are
at,
there any questions from anybody? Now is the time for you to ask.
Yes, I have a question, as always.
Mhm. Very good. I'm glad to hear that, Glenn.
Stefan, there's a book that I read a few times called Beauty in Photography. I think that's the title. Written by Robert Adams, and he defines, for me, he was defining what is beauty. And it became something that had to do with the revelation of truth, which really helped me get away from this aesthetic of beauty and understand work in a much deeper way, which leads me to the question. He is so concerned about revealing the truth. When these bad pairings start to appear in these books, surely he was involved in the production of these books?
you have to compromise. Eventually, you will have to compromise.
Wow,
So-
what a compromise.
Yeah, you can, as I said, so this contains all his work in a comprised form. So you cannot get away with leaving pages out here. There is an interview between Robert Adams and Sarah Meister. I think she now runs Aperture.
Yes, I heard that a few months ago.
And she did this interview with him, and he's I think he is a little bit out of the game now. So I think Sarah Greeno consulted him, but he did. I don't think he objected to a lot of the decisions she had to make. I don't know about these pairings. There is this thing that you can say, okay, this is still, it is still a strong picture. So the pictures are still strong, and you read them like this. So you read them, you flip over, and you just look at this, and you take it in, and then you take this in. So you have to make a compromise, and this is the compromise they came up with. But yeah, you're right. So I'm not a fan of this. So if you look at this, how this picture works when it stands alone, you can't pair it with stuff. It just gets weaker. But this is just what happens in these big books, in these big collection books.
Interesting. Very sad, actually.
I don't know. So I'm happy to have these books. I think you need to have, eventually you will need to have both, and you will need to bring people into his world, and you will need to drag them in, and they will not go, well, I did not start running around, okay, I need Summer Nights Walking, and I need the New West, and I need another edition, You need to start somewhere, and this is a great start. You have to say that. So this is a great start. It starts with a cover. I think the cover is really great. The essays are really good. The printing is excellent. It tells you a little bit about his history, the people he admired. There are these J prints from which they know he had them in his studio. He has this interesting comparisons by Timothy O'Sullivan, shots of the same thing that Robert Adams shot around 100 years later. So there's interesting stuff in here, and you have it's an introduction, but it's a good introduction.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Any more Robert Adams fans out here?
My favorite one is Summer Nights Walking, but I don't actually have it. So now I feel like I really want to get it.
Well, I will bring it. So
you will bring it? What do you mean?
When you're visiting Germany. So
very good. Please.
yeah, you have to. So these photo book shows, they are a sorry excuse for actually having the book in your hand and flipping through it and taking your time with these books. So they are so much fun to look at.
Stefan, thank you for reminding us of the importance of sequencing. I think maybe we all know how important it is, but this is a really nice demonstration of where things can fall short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he works with shapes, and I feel like he plays with positive and negative, and how some shapes almost feel like they fall out of one photo and it gets reversed on the other side.
Yeah, and it's so it's so simple. So these are very simple photographs actually, but he's getting so much out of this. So if you look at something like this, it almost falls apart because it is so black. But then he pairs it with something that is so bright here on the left
and clean.
so clean.
Mm-hmm.
This is just there's so much stuff going on in this simplifications here, like here this doubling of the lights here, where he just puts an anchor into the middle of his photograph somewhere, and just lets everything rotate around it. So you can exchange the nighttime course for this book probably. So it's a clinic in composition.
Stefan, there is a question in the chat. If you could share again the quote about place and fear.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go to the landscape that frightens you the most and take pictures until you're not scared anymore. So this was a quote that he said when he talked about how he approached these vast landscapes. I've concentrated now on the city, on the man-altered landscapes, but he also did books where he just is going out on the field and there's nothing in there. And these are landscapes that can really frighten you because they are so vast and you feel so tiny when you are in there. And this is one thing where he talked about how his fear of falling short, of not being able to bring back pictures from this that hold up to this landscape he's photographing.
There is a question by Arsh. Can you unmute yourself?
Hello.
Hello.
So I wanted to ask, you mentioned earlier that in the collective exhibition, along with Stefan Shore and such people, that these guys were the first to photograph landscapes. So I wanted to just clarify if Robert Adams was the first to capture urban landscapes in this mundane way in photography.
No, I don't think so. I think many people had this idea of mixing, of showing the surrounding. I probably shown you this Aperture pictures. They have a lot of content going on around them. But I think he was, so what makes him from my perspective, what makes him unique is his feel for how this landscape changed. So this feeling of destruction. And for me, he is like a prophet. So there is this point in this book where he talks about he's standing somewhere in the desert, and very, very far away he hears the sound of a motorbike, because at that time there were the first people that were using motorbikes to cross the desert there. And he was so annoyed by this tiny humming noise somewhere. And I thought, okay, we're so far removed from that. We're 40 years removed from that, from this point in time, and our world has completely changed. It is so noisy, and there's practically no untouched landscape left anymore. So for me, his sensibility for this destruction, this emerging destruction, you have to keep in mind, it was the beginning of the 70s. So the feeling that we have that we are in the middle of this destruction. He was photographing when it was at the beginning of this destruction. That he was the one that sensed this. He sensed in a way what was coming. And this is what makes him, for me, makes him unique. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer for your question. I hope this answered your question in any way.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions? But let's just see. Now I can see everybody. That's why I just thought I want to see if anybody else has a question.
Yeah, that's good to see you then.
Okay, good.
Okay, so thank you very much for your patience with me and for running with me through Robert Adams' books. I hope I could interest the one or the other for his work.
Thank you, Stefan. Joanne, did you want
Thank
to
you.
ask something?
No, I just raised my hand to thank Stefan.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I actually wanted to make a question. Question is, I really like. I'm sorry I was late. My internet connection was a little unstable, but I really love the description and what of the book and all the description. Most of it of the comparison of.
Okay.
I never thought about it. Like, yes, of course. I mean, the way that you showed, like the book, the original one, that had this comparison, it was amazing, and it made me bring out. I have a very personal project about the city I was born in, and it's a very faraway city, very little, very no one knows about it. I doubt it.
Can you tell the name, or is it a secret?
In Venezuela.
Yes, and it's in Barquisimeto is the city.
Huh?
And well, I felt very identified with this with his work because of this nostalgia. I don't know how to say.
Nostalgia.
Those nostalgia that these pictures do. I mean, well, that's the feeling that I have, and gave me a lot of ideas about the type of photography that I want to make of this city. Well, I have a lot of them, but now I am like more clear why Robert Adams make this picture. I mean, I actually didn't know about him, like just the name and maybe some pictures, but I really wanted to be here because I wanted to listen about his work, and thank you very much.
I'm happy that you took something away from this.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
I think Robert Adams is a great learning tool. So for me, it still is a great learning tool in all aspects. So if you look at how he constructs a single picture, how he constructs pairings of picture, how long he is fumbling around to see which picture goes with another picture. So there's so much to learn just by flipping through his pictures. And I think the learning never stops. At least it doesn't.
Yeah. I want to just repeat what I said at the beginning of the class, because it fits in here. Kai McBride's class, the photo book structure and meaning is exactly about that. He will be teaching you how to pair images, how to sequence, and really studying, you know, what makes sense, which two pictures like each other and which two pictures don't like each other. That's one of the big things that his class is about. So
let me put in, I agree completely, having taken that course, Andrea, and I definitely would recommend it to anyone that's thinking of putting photo books together. Really, really good ideas. How to get little pictures so you can just sort them around when you make your book, and how to make sure little books before you make big books. And it's just a really good course.
It's hard work. It's hard work. So the West, it's 7,000 pictures. It's 7,000 pictures boiled down to 56. So this is the ratio we're talking about here.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very nice because the feelings that I have of the city, it's like town. It's the nostalgia that everybody or all of my friends and family left. We don't have friends, we don't have family here. Well, in my case, and this is the case of many people I know. I mean, there's Zoom and webinars and FaceTime is the way that we touch, but I mean that in this migration caused that all the landscapes and all the markets and everything has changed so much because people are not there anymore. And I'm scared of that feeling. I mean, it's really I don't know, nice. Like to feel like that there are other people that maybe feel like in a way.
Yeah,
definitely.
This is a fascinating story. I think this is something we can also learn from Robert Adams. So he was in a similar place. He was very personally very invested in this in the city of Colorado, in this sprawls in the suburbs. He was living there, so he knew all the people there. So he knew, he talked to them. So this is in the core. It is also these are very personal stories for him. The personal feeling of hurt, the personal feeling of loss. And then he turns this into a book, and suddenly you look at these pictures and suddenly they become universal, so we can connect to these feelings. But this is because he is very specific, very personal, very precise. So this is universal is here and personal is here, and he just manages to bring this together. And this is the beauty of these photo books here.
All right, Stefan, thank you so much. I will end this session.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.